Shit's Gone Sideways.
Welcome back to another episode of Shit's Gone Sideways. I'm here with my guest for today. It is Sacha D'Souza.
Cheers, Andrew. Thanks for having me, mate.
No worries at all. So, Sacha, I invited you on because we did a storyteller show a couple of months back called Stories That Stir that was run by comedian and MC Monica Rosenfeld. And I obviously talked about my experience in prison, and I think that the theme was hope, I think. And I talked about just that pathway into me deciding to do stand-up comedy. But I was so, enthralled by your life story that I thought I just had to get you on because I think it's something which people would be surprised to really hear more about. It happens in Australia, and also that it's just, something that we think we know a bit about, but we actually know fuck all. So, yeah, I guess I wanted to have you on to just explore that because it was only, in that show, you were only telling your story for, 10 minutes or so. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to just unpack that more and just, go from the beginning of it and then hear more about the journey you had to eat the man you are today.
Yeah, appreciate that, mate. Thank you. Yeah, it's a good opportunity. I don't think my story's unique as such, or I don't think it's anything special, but I know having shared a lot of what has taken me to my point now as a 47-year-old with other people, people are fascinated by the journey. And yeah, hey, if I can share my story.
Well, that room we were in, we had about 80 people in the room, and I think everyone was just like amazed by your story and some of the elements to it. I think we're so sheltered, I guess, in sometimes our own experience. Some of these things, I was just like, I can't believe that actually happens in Australia. So why don't we start with just, I guess, where you grew up? It says Sacha D'Souza, your birth name?
Yeah. So D'Souza's a sort of Portuguese background name from when the Portuguese went to India. So my family, several generations back from there. And then my family moved to Perth, Western Australia. So I was born in Perth.
Yep.
I'm only child. And yeah, I thought, great upbringing, mum and dad that loved me and took care of me.
Yeah.
Really appreciated that. And yeah, great extended family.
And so growing up, were you part of Jehovah's Witness from the beginning as part of the church?
Yeah. So I guess that's what brings us here is that whole story of being raised in a religion that a lot of people don't really know a lot about.
That's right. All I know, from anecdotally, is that it's got some extreme views and that people who leave it are often shunned by their own friends and family. But, that's the very, very limited understanding of it, right?
And that's probably even more than a lot of people know. Jehovah's Witnesses view themselves very much as a Christian religion, and they won't actively say this to people outside because they want to appear as palatable as possible. But the reality is they think that everybody who's not part of their religion is destined for destruction any day now.
So is that going to hell?
No, so they don't believe in hell.
Okay.
One of the key differences of Jehovah's Witnesses is that, of course, they claim that they're the only ones that can understand the Bible properly and that they have the accurate understanding.
That's handy of them, yeah.
Yeah, funny. It's funny how a lot of religions think that way too, hey?
Yeah.
But yeah, only they understand it correctly. And the fundamental thing is they're different from Christendom and from all the other religions of the world who have misunderstood the Bible and have had their eyes blinded by the devil, and that all of those others are part of false religion, or as they say, the Bible calls them Babylon the Great, which is the world empire of false religion.
So they believe in the devil but not hell?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yes. So
what does destruction look like if we don't go to hell?
Yeah, so they try and make their message more palatable by saying God, of course, would never torment someone eternally in lakes of fire because that's an unloving thing to do. So instead, destruction would be eternally wiped out, just killed.
You just go into the void.
Yep, you're dead. And so the reward, if you're good, is life. The punishment is you be destroyed.
But is that forever?
Yeah. So this is the fundamental thing of Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't know. Should I give you the I was going to say elevator pitch, but no. Let me give you the pitch that I would give you on a Saturday morning if I was knocking on your door.
Yeah. So you guys did the knocking on the door all the time?
Yeah. Every one of Jehovah's Witnesses is expected to do that. There's door-to-door ministry, or nowadays you might see them set up with these like trolley carts on street corners with colourful pamphlets and brochures.
How many times would you have done that in your life?
Since I can remember my earliest memories, I was in a pram going out with my father. So
daily or weekly?
At least weekly.
Yeah, wow.
But different times throughout my life, I did extra service, I guess, extra aspects of the Jehovah's Witness ministry, which is called pioneering, which is spending upwards of 90 hours a month as a volunteer in the door-to-door ministry.
Holy shit.
So JWs don't get paid for it. They do it as a voluntary work. But yeah, knocking on someone's door.
Yep. So the door knocks, I open.
Yep.
It's you at the door. What are you saying?
Straight away, I'm going to try and put you at ease. I'm going to say, mate, look, it's great to meet you.
Not going to freak you out. Nothing weird. We're just Jehovah's Witness.
Not here to sell you anything. I know that it's a busy Saturday morning for you, but have you ever thought about what it would be like to live in a world free of all the problems in the world? You know, imagine waking up and never being sick, never growing old, never dying, never having to worry about any crime or violence, and most importantly, being able to live forever and ever and never die. Does that sound appealing to you, sir?
Yeah, it does.
Great. Would you like to know more? So that's hopefully we would get somebody who says, yeah, it does, and tell me more. The reality is most people were, no, that's a bit weird, thanks.
Do people ever just tell you piss off like immediately?
Yeah. And generally, that's people who have done a little bit of research into the religion and have a reason for that. They've been hurt by it. They know somebody who is a part of it. So there's usually a reason. Or people just don't want to be bothered with God botherers and religious people.
Well, I know that the Mormons do it, right? Are there any other religions that
I think a few have dabbled in it.
Yeah. Okay.
So the Mormons, they generally send their missionaries out, their mature elders, their 18-year-old and 19-year-olds for a 2-year stint. But then they don't have to do the ministry anymore. Jehovah's Witnesses are expected to do it from the moment you can walk to the moment you drop dead.
Are you supposed to wear any special attire when you're doing the door knocking?
So the biggest thing for Jehovah's Witnesses is they're very concerned with outward appearances. So how you look is supposed to portray and reflect the dignity of the God we worship. So they're
what does that mean?
Well, they're very big on presentation. So you'll always see the men in shirts and ties, nothing outlandish, no colourful shirts, no florals.
Was it like the RSL club? No thongs, no singlets.
Pretty well.
So, all right. So
no entry. Yeah.
So what's the no can do stuff you can't wear?
Well, hey, give you an idea. One thing, men can't grow a beard. So any facial hair like I've got now, that's considered to be
even
unspiritual.
Stubble?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's unspiritual. Funny though, because Jesus had a beard, right, in the Bible. But, and they're okay with moustaches. So moustaches are fine, but beards are considered to be unspiritual. Don't ask me where in the Bible they get that from, because they don't. A lot of these rules are man-made rules that the religion imposes. And more as a control aspect.
It's a big flip side to like the Amish, right? They all have giant beards, don't they? Yeah.
Right. It's funny that. You're supposed to imitate your Lord and Saviour who looked a certain way, but just don't look like him.
All right. So got to be clean shaven.
Yes.
What else? So you said no colours?
Yeah. Colours? So you just wouldn't want to be drawing excessive attention to yourself. So a Jehovah's Witness basically lives their life giving all attention to God. So don't do anything that brings attention to yourself. Don't do anything that's really going to promote yourself, because at the end of the day, we are nothing, and we want to give all glory to our Heavenly Father, whose name is Jehovah, and be a great witness for him. And that's where they get the name from.
Is that why there's so few Jehovah's Witness stand-up comedians?
Well, yeah, they hate knock jokes, right? Okay.
You don't draw attention to yourself. But I'm killing it on stage.
Oh, mate.
All right. So what else are you not allowed?
So, yeah, I mean, that's the things I suppose you're not allowed. They try and separate themselves from other religions. So a lot of the things that most people would take for granted as being normal, celebrating your birthday, Christmas, Mother's Day, Easter, all those things Jehovah's Witnesses don't do. They will quote scriptural reasons for all of that. But really, when a research is done into it, it's all about setting themselves apart from the rest of the world, setting themselves to be a religion that looks different to other churches. they try and show that they're unique and they were chosen by God in the late 1800s to be the return to true worship, to true Christianity.
So it's like some of it just sounds deliberately contrarian,
Right.
It's just like we do this not because of any main reason, just to stand out as being different.
Right.
Like friends that I had that deliberately didn't watch Game of Thrones when everyone else is watching it because they just didn't want to be one of the crowd who have watched Game of Thrones, right?
Right. Although I'm one of those, and I'm really glad because when I got to the last season and you were all bagging it out, I'm glad I made the right decision and didn't invest all my time in it.
In the end, you were right. Yes.
Oh, mate.
Okay.
But, yeah, the other thing about Jehovah's Witnesses, though, that teaching that they are unique and that everybody else is wrong
Yeah.
creates a mindset in a Jehovah's Witness that makes them feel special.
Superior?
Yeah, I think so, And so I guess I can relate it more to my story. Growing up, I thought that my life was really great. It was very insular. I was in that narrow little bubble of the Jehovah's Witness world.
Yeah.
But I did learn to judge people who were not part of my tribe. People who were not part of our religion or our congregation were considered as worldly people you had to be on guard against because they were going to try and take me away from this true worship.
I thought someone that was worldly was considered to be enlightened. I thought it was a compliment.
Isn't that funny, that the word worldly is a positive thing, but they've, as with all high control cults, they've used loaded language that distorts wording. A worldly person is a non-religious, non-Jehovah's Witness person in their vernacular. So, yeah, very, very different like that. They're set apart with teaching that very soon, any day now, God will bring a destruction to this whole world in what's called Armageddon, where every single person who's not a Jehovah's Witness, and even some who are Jehovah's Witnesses but might not be as spiritually minded as they should be, will all be destroyed, permanently killed.
Wow. I don't remember this from the movie Armageddon.
No. Oh, you missed that bit? Yeah, no, that was the deleted cuts. Yeah, that was on the floor. Bruce Willis comes in and saves the day with a...
Did you ever successfully recruit anyone yourself when you were doing the door knocking?
Yeah, well, let's see. Yeah, there were a lot of people I called back on regularly, yes. There's a lot of people I had Bible studies with, which is basically using a Jehovah's Witness publication that was designed to be, as they call it, a roadmap to the Bible, so to help you understand the Bible better. But of course, when you look at it, once you're out, you see it was actually pushing a particular set of doctrines and a understanding of the Bible. So I did study with a lot of them. Yes, I did take some to the point of becoming baptized as Jehovah's Witnesses as well. And that's something I kind of feel bad about now because I feel like I was doing what I thought was right to save them.
Exactly right.
But now they're trapped in that, they're deprived of a normal life too.
But you didn't know any better at the time.
No, I didn't. And I mean, that gets back to what we were saying. When you're raised in an insular bubble, you just assume that your worldview is correct. And
do people within the church live in a certain area? Like, are you guys all localized to a certain area or not?
No, not at all. So Jehovah's Witnesses are worldwide. But
I meant in Perth, like...
No, they live everywhere. So I guess we tend to joke about it that they're a high-control cult that operates in plain sight and lives within the community in amongst all of us.
Because I would have thought, just in my head, that by being all separated out, there's kind of higher risk of, I guess, you guys understanding a different viewpoint and changing your mind about your beliefs, right? As opposed to being all, I guess, when you hear about other the ideas of cults, they're all in one compound, they're all together because it's much easier to kind of maintain that collective thought, maybe?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, though. This is where indoctrination comes in. And if you can or if any organization can keep a steady supply of indoctrination, it's almost like keeping somebody plugged into an intravenous drip. If you can keep people plugged in, they don't have to physically be locked away in a compound, but mentally, socially, they are effectively locked away. So Jehovah's Witnesses have 3 meetings a week. Where the same material is repeated. Children are indoctrinated from a very young age with this very narrow worldview. So it becomes so much a part of life that you don't have to physically be locked away to be mentally locked away.
Yeah, okay, because they spend so much time in it, their belief system becomes kind of bulletproof to outside forces.
And your social circle is the same. Jehovah's Witnesses won't associate with people who are worldly. So, as I've often said, we were allowed to be friendly with people, but never friends of people who weren't part of the congregation.
I mean, how does that work in the real life when you have work colleagues and people invite you to an event or
Well, you just
sporting,
wouldn't go.
or even a sporting team, something like that?
So we wouldn't go to any extracurricular things after school, anything after work, no social events.
Couldn't play team sports?
No, team sports was something that was looked down on as well. So I grew up, wanting to play AFL. I couldn't do that because that would mean training and becoming friends with people who were not part of my religion. And in fact, Jehovah's Witnesses have a slick propaganda campaign that they have with cartoons and well-presented things for their children of this generation, where they will literally have scenes where a young child sits down with his father saying, "Dad, I'd like to just, join this club after school." And the father will sit there and open the Bible and say, "Now, how does Jehovah feel about these ones at your school? Will they help you to worship him, or will they take you away and take you to the path of Satan?" And of course, the child, who's easily manipulated by that emotion, hears that and goes, "Oh, they're going to take me to Satan. Of course I won't do that, Daddy. Thank you very much." They have a hug, everything, case closed. Propaganda works. Children think they're making a decision for themselves, but really they're not. And so, yeah.
Keeping kids away from sport that's a pretty cruel blow.
Right. Well, they try and replace it with some, congregational activities, but even the spirit of competition was condemned within Jehovah's Witnesses. So if you were playing a game, you couldn't get too competitive. You couldn't start to, have this rivalry because that might bring out the worldly spirit.
Now you're fighting against your own biology, right? Like, it seems, I don't know, religion can't suppress that too much, I don't think, just that inbuilt competitive spirit that we all have, right?
Yeah.
It's part of
Well, although there you open up something. So the inbuilt spirit that we all have as humans now, all of this is because we are imperfect. So again, putting on my Jehovah's Witness cap, we were created perfect. Adam and Eve sinned in the first Garden of Eden. From then on, we inherited imperfection. Part of that is having this whole personality type that is not what we were originally designed to have by God. I mean, it feels ridiculous saying this. So, being competitive, having, all these bad traits that we might say, that was all part of imperfection. So we need to constantly fight against it. And they would use an illustration at meetings saying that imperfect human tendencies are a bit like a car with bad wheel alignment. We're always being pulled off to the side and we need to fight to keep ourselves straight on the road. For example, fighting competitiveness, fighting pride, fighting haughtiness, fighting any of those things. That's before you get into the things that they class as sins, like purity culture or sins or anything like that.
Yeah, okay. So that's when you're talking about your hormones and lust and that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah. So all these.
So as a result, you've got people in this environment feeling like they're always on the risk of sinning. They were born imperfect. They are born broken. They need to be saved. We need to be fixed. And the only way to be fixed is to do things God's way. And the only way to know what God's way is to follow the directions from this organization. So it creates this cycle that really affects people's self-esteem and self-worth and keeps them on the treadmill within that insular bubble.
What about schools when you're a kid, right? Are you going to schools where you're hanging around with just worldly children?
Yeah. So we'd go to normal schools, although nowadays a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses families are doing homeschooling for the very reason of keeping the kids separate.
What were you? Were you at a school?
Oh, yeah, I went to a normal school, went to a high school in Perth, Lockridge.
And all these would have had sports, right?
Right.
And you were just encouraged not to be involved with it.
Yeah, I couldn't do anything after school. I had some good friends I hung out with at school, but they were my school friends. And if they ever said, "Hey, come around to our place after," I'd always have, "No, thanks, I can't do that. I've got somewhere to be." So I'd have to.
Did they ever try and have a conversation with you about, what's going on, man?
Yeah. They did,
Yeah.
and I think because people saw, I think a lot of that too, though, as a kid growing up, I had a lot of cognitive dissonance where my mind was fighting with, I wanted to be normal, I wanted to be accepted, but I also knew that I thought or had been told these were bad people. So they're my friends. I play basketball with them, I play AFL with them, I play tennis with them at school, but not after hours. But they're also people that'll take me away from the true worship of God, and God won't be happy with me. So but they're not bad people, but they are bad people. So that cognitive dissonance would happen in the brain. And
Wow, that sounds like a massive head fuck, particularly
Right.
when you're a young kid
yeah,
trying to battle those two different voices in your head.
yeah, that's a really good way to put it. And it's a lot of pressure for a kid who should just be enjoying life. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
look-
Yeah, it's supposed to be just like figuring
Right.
out sport and like, figuring out masturbation for the first
Oh, don't
time
even
and
get into
hormones and girls and
dating and
going
none
for
of
a
that.
beer and like all this kind of stuff that you just figure out on the way. But then at the same time, you're battling against all these pressures of Jehovah's Witnesses' beliefs.
Yeah, yeah. And also that absolute desire that kids have to make your parents happy, to make your social group happy, to be, we would get constant validation and praise if we were doing the right thing amongst, from a congregation point of view. So then you'd go to school and you'd be torn with wanting to be normal, but then go back to the congregation and be held up as a model, exemplary person who should be imitated by the other younger ones in the congregation. So
Yeah, okay.
you're kind of stepping in two worlds. And in our way, being raised in that environment, I would justify it by just saying, well, this world is temporary. This world won't be around forever. In fact, any day now it's going to be destroyed. And I'm going to get to live forever with all these real people forever and ever on a paradise transformed earth. And that's my real life. So we never really viewed the life that we had now as the real life. This was just your temporary one until the real life would happen any day now. So as a result, you didn't really invest a lot of effort into living and mixing with people who they were going to die. From our point of view, these people were going to be killed by God. And the really, the fucked up thing about it is that we would pray for that. I would pray for the imminent destruction of this whole world. I would be thanking God for his wonderful promise to bring a paradise earth and to get rid of all the evil people.
Including people that were your friends at school.
Right. And that's where the cognitive dissonance comes in, because you wouldn't think about the little old lady down the street, your friends at school, or the 2-year-old baby next door that was also going to be destroyed in this
bring on
cataclysm.
Armageddon, the void, making these people obliterated off the face of the earth.
Yep.
That's what we're praying for every day.
Right. And in fact, the leadership of Jehovah's Witnesses, the governing body who are located in New York, 8 men who run the organization, give talks on their channel, on their video channels, where they literally say, the day of Armageddon will be a fiery destruction where there will be corpses laid out everywhere, and we pray for this. They look forward to it. They almost get off on it because they think that this is solving the world's problems, not realizing that the very act of God coming through and killing 8 billion people, or however we've got on the world right now, is in itself a really disgusting thing and is not a loving act. But they kind of just whitewash that part. A lot of the doctrine, when you really put a lot of thought to it, doesn't make sense. And when you do start to analyze it, it's problematic, it's toxic.
Well, I mean, it sounds like evil almost,
Right.
right? To be praying for all these innocent people to meet their doom.
Right.
And you're being brought up with that thought process from a young age, and then being celebrated for, it's quite manipulative.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
Manipulative. And even to the point, Andrew, where some on my mum's side of the family, none of them were Jehovah's Witnesses. So I was even distant from my aunts, my cousins, my grandmother, because they also had to be kept at arm's length. So that's really fucked up. I was deprived the opportunity to really get to know members of my family that I would love to have, because I was told they didn't worship Jehovah, so that they're not your real family. Your real family are your brothers and sisters in the congregation.
And your mum's gone from having this relationship with them to herself, not.
Yeah, so mum always felt like it wasn't true. So the quick backstory is my father was basically raised in it, and he had childhood memories of his mother raising him, and he lost her at a very young age. I think he was 5 or 6 when he lost her, and he then was raised by his father and his stepmother, and he basically had to hang on to the memories of his mum and the teachings that the witness religion gave, which was, you will see her again in paradise if you too become faithful. But he kind of, after she passed and he was raised by his father and his stepmother, he was raised basically in a Catholic home. He went to a Catholic school. He was sent out to Australia as a teenager.
So he wasn't raised during his formative years as JW?
Up until about 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So it shows the power of manipulation. He remembered that.
Wow, that's fucked.
He then goes and lives a normal life in Perth. In fact, my dad was a bloody cool guy. I'd love to have time travel to go back in time and be a peer of his in his teens and 20s. He was in pub rock bands all around Perth. I think he had played backing for Bon Scott once or something, in the early days prior to AC/DC.
And then it makes you wonder, how did this guy get involved back again with Jehovah's Witness after that?
So this is the power of emotional manipulation. So his brother, there was just the two of them, his brother started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses again, then introduced him back to it. They both recognized this was the religion that our mum and our dad were part of when we were little. This is the religion that enables us to see our mum again in paradise. This is the way we need to go. So Dad made a complete about face. When he and Mum were together in those first couple of years of being together, and when they got married, she absolutely fell in love with this man who loved playing music. He was a skilled electric guitarist, really clever guy. He gave all that away, cut his hair really short, cut his beard, started wearing shirts and ties, gave up all of his music industry, stopped playing in pub rock groups, stopped his whole interest in, and basically shelved his personality and became this clone of the religion. And he might feel he chose to do that, but really he didn't. I love my father. He's a great guy. Not that he talks to me anymore, but he became a clone of what he was supposed to be, all because the carrot that was dangled before him was, you'll get to see your mum again in paradise. And so my mum, she kind of resents that the man that she fell in love with changed. He was never bad to her. He's always been a really, really good husband, but his religion came before her. And in that moment, when he became a Jehovah's Witness again properly in his early 20s, she was put secondary.
Are they still together?
They are still together, and that's a testament to my mum's character, maybe also to her just sticking with what's comfortable, but she can't talk to him about these issues. She can't really express that she doesn't believe. She tried to be sort of a witness for a few years in my early teen years, and she again just recognized this doesn't make sense. The doctrines don't make sense. So I have a lot of respect for her because she was able to see through what I couldn't see through as a kid. And my father, being raised in the 70s and 80s, my father had final say. It was always the male over it. So he got to take me to the congregation meetings. He got to raise me as a Jehovah's Witness. And Mum was supportive of that, even though deep down in her heart she didn't really believe it. But I feel for her because she just had to live the life of a Jehovah's Witness person, wife, submissive wife, because of course they're all about womanly submissiveness in the organisation. She had to live that life even though she didn't believe in it, and support him in his ventures as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And she also had to see how it was depriving me of a lot of things. She wanted me to get a trade. She wanted me to play social sports. She wanted me to hang out with friends.
That's got to be the hardest part.
Right.
Seeing that you're bringing up a child into that and they're not getting to live a normal life, particularly when you yourself are not hugely, indoctrinated, not hugely a follower of the beliefs of Jehovah's Witness, but been dragged along by your husband.
Yeah.
There's one thing for it to be you yourself, but then second for it to be your son. I can't imagine what and a battle she's gone through.
She's an amazing woman from that point of view. She's very supportive of where I'm at now, because I guess we'll get to that in the story. Now that I've completely left the religion, she's very supportive of that. But again, she's now having to battle something, which is seeing this rift between her husband and her son, seeing her husband not want to talk to his only son because of...
And she's caught in the middle.
She's caught in the middle again. Yep, spot on. And so I really feel for her, that she doesn't get to be her authentic self through all of this. She was the supportive wife of the Jehovah's Witness. She was the supportive mother.
And it sounds like she's caught in the middle, and she sees that the problem is that it's the church, right? But she just doesn't have the resources or the ability to come up against that force.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, that's right. So it's hard for her. It is very hard for her. And in fact, anybody who's raised in an insular religious bubble like that, or lives sort of on the outskirts of that bubble, understands that it's very hard to be the one to break the cycle and to sort of say to the people in it, hey, this is having a negative impact on your life, my life, the community. It's very hard for them to break that cycle.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I mean, let's start heading in that direction. So, tell me about your 20s growing up in Jehovah's Witness.
So I took it so seriously. As a teenager at school, and then in my early 20s, I took being a part of the religion very seriously. I just assumed it was true because I was told it was true. In fact,
did you go to university?
No. So higher education is also condemned by Jehovah's Witnesses.
Don't get too smart.
Exactly. Funny that. Most cults say that. Right.
No sport, no uni.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of fucking shit rules here.
Yeah, which is why, even as a 47-year-old now.
No beards.
Right. I feel now I'm still, what would you say, not infantilized, I'm sort of stunted in growth, because there's a lot of stuff I'm still learning for the first time now that most people
like what
would have lived in their 20s. Well, it's the whole thing of just learning how to make new friends, learning how to fit into this world without judging it.
I still don't know how to do that, if that makes sense. Yeah,
right. And look, I'm realizing most people battle with just, putting themselves out there, right? I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But yeah, look, through my 20s, I took it seriously. In fact, at 19, I applied to take on an extra privilege of service within the Jehovah's Witness faith, which was not very many got to go. So Jehovah's Witnesses have, I think it's 8 million worldwide at the moment, 8 million members worldwide. And they have branch offices or headquarters in most parts of the world. I applied from Perth to go to the headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses in Sydney. And I lived and worked on site there for 5 years as a volunteer in basically like dormitory rooms, in a compound. You talk about a cult compound. Well, there's my cult compound that I lived in.
Sorry, where was that located?
Ingleburn, Denham Court.
Yeah, okay.
In Sydney, so southwest Sydney.
Yeah.
And that basically was the headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses for Australia, Pacific, New Zealand, Islands, where all of the printing of the publications would take place.
Is it still there?
Still there, still there. They also have a very big audio-visual studio there where a lot of these propaganda videos are made.
How do you make a living if you're a volunteer?
Well, we'd live and work on site. Everything was provided, basic food. Your laundry was taken care of for you. You got an allowance of $90 a month. So I was there from 1994 to 99. So $90 a month in 94 to 99 still wasn't a lot of money, just as it's not now.
Yeah.
I think they might give them 130, 150 now. I don't know. Lived and worked on site. Look, in some ways, it was kind of like a really stripped back, clean version of a uni life, minus any of the fun stuff that you might do at uni.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the main draw cards of go to uni, right?
So I believe. Again, wouldn't know that. Mate. Never got to live that life. But look, I had some good friends there. But again, friendships within the Jehovah's Witness bubble, they're still very conditional. They're conditional on you saying the right things, having the right interests, not saying the wrong things, certainly not expressing wrong interests, looking right, acting right, your choice of entertainment, all of that sort of stuff. So otherwise you'd be judged by your peer group. So as long as I did the right things, I had a good circle of friends.
Is it so bad to be judged by your peer group? Like, what if you said, I enjoy watching The Simpsons, or...
Well... Yeah, look, we would watch a lot of stuff, but even pop culture stuff would be highly edited according to whether it was in line with godly principles or not. So, if there's an episode of a comedy show that had some gay people in it, well, you shouldn't watch that. Or if there's an episode where there was a swear word, well, you shouldn't watch that. Even Star Wars and things like that. Be careful when you watch that because it talks about the battle of good versus evil and uses magic powers and spirit. Definitely not Harry Potter. Definitely not Lord of the Rings or anything like that.
Well, I mean, Darth Vader turned into Darth Vader from Anakin Skywalker because he tried to save his mother, right? Which has
Parallels
parallels
to Satan, right?
Seems to have parallels to your dad.
Yeah. Yes, the force is strong with you. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, man. But
So yeah, what other things are you not allowed to or encouraged not to watch or to?
Yeah, so movies would be highly edited. You'd be very careful what you'd choose. Your social.
You couldn't go to a cinema.
Oh, you
right?
could,
Yeah.
but again, if you were seen to go to the wrong sort of movie, if it was the wrong rated movie, if it was a movie with a theme that wasn't in line with godly principles,
Someone would come and have a word
oh
with you.
yeah. So very much within the Jehovah's Witness world, whether it was during my time at Bethel at the headquarters or just in any congregation, Jehovah's Witnesses will know that if they are caught out doing something that is wrong, they will be taken before 3 elders from the congregation and they will have to basically confess their sins, be counseled, berated, be made to see the error of their ways and spiritually helped to get back on the right path, etc. So
Did that ever happen to you?
Only when I started questioning the faith.
Yep.
Yeah, I went through my versions of that, and that's a few years on from where we're talking now. But yes,
were there any people that you knew that went through that at the time?
Yeah. Look, particularly in your teens and 20s, young people will be young people, and there were some who fell victim to the temptations of the flesh or some sort of thing. Oh yeah, they would be berated and. Talk about the inappropriateness and the overstepping.
Are you saying like pornography or they had sex?
Maybe a bit of both.
Yeah.
Right? So even normal stuff, the inappropriateness of these elders, they would take these ones into a locked room at the back of the hall, of the Kingdom Hall, the library. They would sit down and they would have to confess their most intimate things. If somebody had been found out or if they were suspected of having sex or something, they would be asked and interrogated to divulge deeply personal things to the point where these 3 men who are not psychologists, they're not therapists, they're not trained, they're just 3 blokes who happen to have a position in the congregation.
Just nosy elders.
Right. Who half the time might be getting off on these stories.
Yeah, tell me the graphic details.
Yes.
Tell it slower. Like,
if I can tell you stories about the sorts of things, particularly where young women were asked things that were grossly inappropriate. If, somebody, let's say she's a young lady in the congregation, baptized sister, 18, 19, 20-year-old, has a boyfriend who's not part of the congregation, or they were part of the congregation. Now, we believe that you may have engaged in some immorality. We need to know, was this premeditated? What underwear did you wear before this date? Trying to discern whether this was something that they thought, did you think about this in advance? Did you enjoy the activity? Tell me how often, those sorts of disgusting.
creepy shit.
Right.
Yeah.
The sort of stuff that if you asked that in any other setting, you would be.
What the fuck is wrong with you, dude? Yeah.
But when, again, people are in an insular religious bubble and they've been made to feel guilty, I think about the religion, people are trapped in what I call the fog, the fear, obligation, and the guilt. The fear of doing something wrong, the obligation of always having to run on the treadmill properly, and the guilt that you will impose upon yourself.
Yeah.
So somebody does that, they go before the elders, they're already feeling guilty.
So that they feel like they have to be totally transparent about everything, right? Yeah.
They don't understand boundaries, that these people don't need to know this shit. And so they'll end up divulging all this stuff, be made to feel so awful, and then have these 3 people or more members of the elders of the congregation know about intimate things that's nobody's business. So that's where I think, again, people don't understand in the greater community that religions such as Jehovah's Witnesses, Christadelphians, so many others who are very similar in that high control, their members are edited, they are policed, they are punished with punitive measures, and they're made to feel like shit for just being normal humans.
Thought control,
exactly.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. In fact, it's interesting you say that because a leading cult specialist, Dr. Stephen Hassan, he's written some fantastic books about the power of cults. He was actually part of the Moonies cult, which was a big one from Korea and then in the States. he wrote a book called Combating Cult Mind Control. Fantastic book. And it really doesn't matter whether you're in a religious cult or a political cult or a social cult or anything. The principles apply. But he basically condensed things down that when people are in an environment like that, they are subject to the BITE model. And the BITE model, or BITE, stands for behavior control, information control, thought control, as you rightly said, and emotional control. And if you can be captured by an organization or a group that uses that BITE model, you can basically be led anywhere as a human, and you lose your autonomy, you lose your individuality. Your behavior, your information, your thought, your emotions are controlled. You basically control the whole person. And so people would allow themselves to be subjected to all sorts of inappropriate things in a religion like Jehovah's Witnesses, because they trust that these elders are appointed by God, and so you have to answer to them.
Well, I mean, whether it's the Nazis or cults, you hear about these groups that just perpetrate just this insane acts, and you think, how can it get to that stage?
It's just
right?
following orders.
Yeah, exactly. And you think, how can it get to that stage? But it sounds like if you're using that bite model, they've got their fangs right into you, right? It's just
right.
You're bitten.
Yeah, yeah. And these are the sorts of things I realized as I got older. I started to, I guess, these things sat uncomfortably with me. I started to see, as you get older, I left Bethel, which was the headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, after 5 years there. I carried on as a good Jehovah's Witness. I got married to a amazing woman who was also raised in the Jehovah's Witness mindset.
Did you know her growing up?
No, we met in our teen years.
Okay.
Yeah, through our Jehovah's Witness preaching activities. That's how we met one another. We were both out there preaching together.
Okay, because I was going to ask, is there like a Jehovah's Witness dating app? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, well, again, you can only romantically be interested in someone who was also one of Jehovah's Witnesses, but also of the same spiritual standing. So let me clarify that. So even amongst Jehovah's Witnesses, you would judge one another as to whether somebody was good enough or not. So you would have, colloquially, they'd refer to the plodders in the congregation, the ones that just come along to the occasional meetings, but they're not really setting the world on fire. They go out in the preaching work maybe 1 or 2 hours a month, but they're not the real exemplary ones. So as a young person growing up in that environment, you wouldn't dream of looking at someone like that as a potential marriage mate. Because, and again, dating is out of the question. You're looking at someone as a potential marriage mate from the very first time you think that they're nice.
Wow. But that also seems insane that your dating pool is not just Jehovah's Witnesses. It's much smaller than that,
right?
Because there's ones that are considered to be inferior Jehovah's,
And that's the thing, like in my late teens, there was a lovely girl that I really liked, but I couldn't pursue anything because her family was not spiritually minded enough.
Wow.
I mean, that's just awful to say that out loud. I've never said that out loud, but
it's like, the rich and the poor. So the dirty Jehovah's. No, she's not she's not of the quality we're looking for for our son. Yep. Wow.
So in many ways, it's a little bit like an arranged marriage because you are being directed to choose from a pool of people that have been the prerequisites are they match up to where you are in your standards and your spiritual standing. So, are they a pioneer? As I said, there's somebody who spends 90 hours a month in the preaching work, only works part-time in a menial job to support themselves, but their sole focus is on the preaching work and Jehovah's Witness activity. Well, that's somebody you can look at as a potential marriage mate.
Couldn't you just explain that the girl who's a less quality Jehovah's Witness is just really hot?
Yeah.
Isn't that an argument?
Oh, well, even then you wouldn't even be able to just fall for someone's attractiveness. We would have it drummed into us from a young age that charm may be false and prettiness is in vain, but a woman that fears God is the one who you should look at, which is a scripture from Proverbs in the Bible. So basically look at the inner person, not the outer person. Because again, even if you're not 100% physically attracted to somebody now, in the paradise, in the new world, when everything's perfect, we'll all be perfect, and then you'll fall in love. So
that's when I'd start questioning my religion, I think.
Yeah, right? Right. You're a smarter man than most of us were, mate. We just went along with it.
This can't be right.
Yeah. So you choose from the best. And look, my wife, Sherry, she's awesome. And, we've been married now 25 odd years. So, we've made a good life for ourselves. But our life wasn't easy because both of us basically had to choose somebody who was deemed to be appropriate. I know when she first showed interest in me and I and her father asked, is he appointed as a ministerial servant, which is basically a deacon or the lower level just below an elder? And if he's not yet, well, maybe you shouldn't be looking at him. So again, standing, reputation, position, it's all so important in the Jehovah's Witness world. Is he materialistic? Is he pursuing worldly interests? If so, you shouldn't look at him, or vice versa, you shouldn't look at her. That's how controlled it is in the dating world, and you can't also just go out on a date to get to know someone. The moment you ask someone out, you're already committed, because Jehovah's Witnesses are good at one thing, and it's gossip. They've got nothing else to worry about amongst their insular group except who's going out with who. So the moment you go out with someone, you're pretty well committed. If you work out halfway down the track, I don't know if we click or not, it's too late. You're pretty well
Turns
committed.
out she's really boring. She's got nothing to talk about. I was like, sorry, mate, the wedding's next week.
Yeah. I mean, there have been people like that literally got married because they thought they were the best suited or the best of the small choice available, but they didn't really click. And that's really tragic. So what happens? Do you just go along with the motions? There's people who have had families like that too, and not just in the Jehovah's Witness world, in the Mormon world, in so many of these other high control religions. You choose somebody, you form a whole life with them, but is it actually for love? Is it actually for, is your heart involved, or is it all a head knowledge thing? Is it a box ticking exercise?
I mean, these things all seem to add up to just living a very unfulfilled life.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, you convince yourself that your life is fulfilled.
Yeah.
And so this is the other thing that high control cults do. Anytime you feel that it doesn't quite feel right, or your cognitive dissonance is at play, or this doesn't feel like you're being authentic, well, it's your fault. Religions are very, very adept at saying it's your fault. Wherever you're at, it's your fault. It's not their fault. So if you did feel like that, you just go, well, maybe I need to pray more. Maybe I need to study more. Maybe I need to rely on God more to make my life more complete, or whatever. So again, the cycle just builds up where the person is trapped in that, that never-ending circle of judging themselves and thinking they're just not spiritual enough. It's a messed up thing, particularly for kids being raised in that environment. When your life should be at your most fun, it's also one where there's a whole lot of pressure on your shoulders.
And you're also, being limited in the possibilities of life, right? Because you're told you can't go study at university. That in itself limits, your options for your future.
But again, why would you invest in this doomed world that's soon to be destroyed when you can invest in God's new kingdom that's coming any day now, quote unquote? That's literally, so they had a publication, a magazine in 1968 that literally said, a quote, why would you invest 7 or 8 years in education now when surely God's new world will be here by then? It'd be a waste to do that now. That was 1968.
So the pitch is what? Have a shit life now because there's a good one coming real soon.
Right. Basically, yes. Yep. None of which can be proven because no one's, lived that. But that's religion 101, isn't it? Give up living your real life now for a promised thing that you can't actually prove is even going to happen.
Yeah, because paradise will be so good. Yep. Just take my word for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
How is that any different to perhaps a lot of, say, from the Islam faith, Give up your life now because you're going to have your eternal paradise with your whatever, like the fundamentalist extremists will act a certain way because they're being promised some utopia in paradise when they get up there.
72 virgins
right.
or whatever, yeah.
Right. Who can prove it? I don't know, just do it. So, yeah, but I kind of went along with all that, and it wasn't until my mid-30s that I got to a point where I allowed myself to sort of start to question all this stuff.
Do you remember what was the catalyst to get you to start thinking, to start questioning things?
Yeah. So I guess, in line with the podcast, my first of a couple of shit's gone sideways moments for me would be, here I am in a leadership position in the congregation, giving parts on the congregation platform, also at conventions and assemblies in front of thousands of people. presenting material that has all been authorized through the governing body, the leadership of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I had to deliver a part that was all about appreciating the rich spiritual heritage of our organization. And it encouraged us to go back to the older publications, the library of books that they have at the Kingdom Halls, to read all the old books and to appreciate that God's divine channel of truth has been with this organization since the late 1800s. We should follow that message through and appreciate it. So I thought in the preparation of that part, I'd spend hours at the Library of Jehovah's Witnesses there and look at these old books. And when I started to look at them, the writings of the early founder of Jehovah's Witnesses, Charles Taze Russell, and his successor, Joseph Rutherford, they were batshit crazy books. They were crazy-ass things that if I knew about, I would have recognized this doesn't make sense. Now, we would justify it and go, well, you see, there's a scripture in Proverbs that says, the light gets brighter as the day draws ever closer. That's a scripture they pluck out to say that the light of understanding will be clearer as you get closer to the new system. It's actually completely out of context because that chapter in the Bible doesn't talk about understanding of doctrine for a 20th century American-based Christian religion.
Yeah.
But they've adapted it that way. So I would say, oh, well, that was old light. So of course it didn't make sense. That was old light. But I'm talking the most craziest things, that they would measure the pyramids of Egypt and use some equation that the measurements would then equate to the years when Jesus would return to bring the kingdom back to earth. And it's like, what? You know, I'm reading that stuff going, I never knew about this. How come we were never told a lot of this stuff? And that's just one of many things.
And the reason is because they leave that stuff out because it just seems so out there, right?
I guess that's whitewashing of history, isn't it? You know, you whitewash history. And so this part that I was intended to deliver was to say, hey, we've got a rich spiritual heritage. Oh, but don't go and actually read it. Just look at the books.
Just acknowledge we have it. Don't fucking read the fine print.
Yeah, don't open the book. And so I can honestly say, hand on my heart, that with an honest motive, I went there to prepare that part. And in the preparation of that part, I started to see this crazy-ass stuff that the religion was based on. And so I just started reading more and more. So I did not go and do the condemned taboo thing that the religion says and read apostate material, which is non-Jehovah's Witness approved, ex-Jehovah's Witness material that speaks unflatteringly about the religion. I didn't go to any of that. I didn't need to. I read their own books, dozens of the books, and I started to say there's a pattern here that this religion has not been truthful with its members. And for a religion that likes to call themselves the truth in colloquial expressions amongst themselves, they were not being truthful. So I started to go, well, if this isn't true...
If those books with this crazy information have made you question everything, why, instead of just editing out that information in terms of what they're teaching now, why wouldn't they just completely get rid of the books entirely?
So funny you say that. So after I started doing a lot of that research into those books...
Yeah.
It was only maybe a year or two after that that a direction from the governing body worldwide actually came to all congregations to cull older books older than 1980. And so we had a working day at the Kingdom Hall, a volunteer working day where you do the lawns and paint the walls and vacuum the floors and also cull the library of all the old books and throw them on a massive pile to go to the rubbish tip. And these were old books that, like, from a visual thing, they look great. You know, imagine old bound books from the late 1800s, early 1900s with leather bound. They're beautiful things. And I just thought, hang on, I gave a part saying we had to appreciate this rich spiritual heritage, and now it's on a pile along with grass clippings to go down to the local garbage dump.
Yeah.
So I actually stashed a heap of the books underneath the Kingdom Hall, and I continued in my reading of them and took one home every week covertly to read them because they wanted to throw them all out.
Because of the contents, right? Because there was this crazy shit that, if it was making you question things, that must have been happening with other people in other places around the world.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I can say that for an absolute fact because I found myself to an amazing online forum with thousands of people who are in exactly the same boat as me at that particular point, tens of thousands of people, in fact, probably hundreds of thousands of people that have gone through this point in their life that got together and was like, hey, is this just me or are you guys notice? But that's another whole story. So I continue to research all that stuff. I see they were whitewashing history. They would package it up and say to the members, well, we keep putting everything online now. We've scanned everything. And so you would research and find it on our online library. Now, what they were doing there too was changing the content on the online versions from what was in print. There were several instances of books where whole paragraphs were completely rewritten. And I can remember in that first stage where I was waking up, I like to use the expression waking up to the truth about the truth, that I would read the printed one that was published in, say, 1985 or whatever, then go to the online version and see the whole paragraph was completely different and written to skew the original meaning.
Yeah. And so, I mean, what was your take on the original, why they needed to do that? What was it about the original meaning which was problematic?
I think just simply the fact that a lot of the predictions didn't come true. A lot of their original teachings didn't come true. You know, Jehovah's Witnesses like to say they never predicted an end time date. Well, they did multiple years, 1975, 1929, all these different days where they said that Armageddon would come. It never happened. And as with so many religions or political movements or anybody that says something's going to happen, how do you save face when that something doesn't happen? Well, you just change the meaning. I like to quote a great quote that Australian comedian who went over to the UK, Deborah Frances White said. She used a quote, "New light. If you can't change, no, where is it? If you can't change what you say, change what you say means." Words to that effect. So they basically just, I'm sorry, apologies, Deborah, if I've messed that up. Basically rewrite the meaning of those words. And I think that's their main reason why they did it. So it's whitewashing history, and it gets back to that bite model again, the information control.
Well, if you're looking back at the history of your church and all these crazy predictions and none of them came true, then you start to think, well, am I part of the right religion? Right. Yeah. So that makes sense.
And that's the point I got to. So that was my moment where I went, shit, this is a cult. So many reasons prove it. I'm stuck in this, but what the hell do I do? Because my whole life is stuck in this. My wife, we didn't have kids, so I guess in one way that's fortunate. I wasn't raising my kids in that indoctrination.
Yeah.
But again, how do I say to my wife when our whole foundation of our relationship, getting to know each other, our marriage, our activities as a couple was based around this religion? How do I say, hey, I don't think this is true? Well, you can't, because the moment you say that to somebody, they will report you to the elders. You will be classed as a dangerous person.
Even your wife or husband?
Yeah. In fact, there's so many articles where members of the religion are praised for basically ratting out a family member.
Snitching on their own family. Wow.
Yep. So I was in a situation about 2011, 2012 where I fully deconstructed and went, this religion can't possibly be true. It's just, it doesn't make sense for some of the reasons we've chatted about here and 1,000 others. And I started to allow myself to make a few friends outside through car clubs and things like that. But, you know, I just started to think of a life outside of that bubble. But with Sherry, with my awesome wife, I couldn't come out to her and say, hey, I think we're in a cult, because she would leave me. So I had to, maybe it's a bit manipulative, I had to kind of create the safe environment for us to focus on the things that were not Jehovah's Witness related. That could be a foundation of our life. So at that point, Sherry was working for a cancer practice, and I encouraged her to get extra education. She did a university course that her bosses helped her to go through, correspondence, and I was fully supportive of that. She was throwing herself into spending more time at the cancer practice, helping cancer patients. I was fully supportive of that.
So you had this plan and you're planting these seeds, but you couldn't talk about it.
No, so I would occasionally drop little things where, for example, I'd find a section in the publication that had been changed, like I was saying to you earlier, and I'd just go into it and I'd say, hey, look, I've just printed this up and this seems to have changed, and I'm really unsure why would they do that? Oh, I don't know. And then I'd drop it there and say, anyway, what are we going to do? Let's go for a walk or let's go have dinner. So I would drop a few things. Yeah, it was probably a bit manipulative. When Sherry says it, she sees that and she goes, wow, that's disturbing, but I can't say that. I can't, what's my husband doing? I don't know. So I was just basically both creating a safe atmosphere that wasn't JW related and also planting seeds of doubt.
so that she could start to question it
Yeah.
herself. Right.
Not that I want. I guess I also make it clear is that not that I was trying to force her to adopt my worldview. If she had still remained a believer, that's her choice. I wasn't trying to make her go along with me, but I was trying to think she's a smart person too, and if she knew what I knew, I'm sure she'd want the opportunity to make a choice for herself.
Yeah.
And so by giving that information, I just slowly paved the way for her to question things, and then through a couple of years,
it's hard for people, even in the face of like logic and more information, to still come to allow their brain to get to that conclusion, right?
Yes, so that's where cognitive dissonance comes in as
Yeah.
well. You know, that mental gymnastics. And I realized that Sherry was going through her own form of that too. She also saw, though, how I was treated in the congregation. When I started to perhaps lessen some of my activities, or when I was questioned for maybe not seeming to take things as serious, she saw the elders starting to harass me and ask me questions. I also had elders calling me up saying, hey, we've heard Sherry's going to a university course. Is that the wisest thing? As the husbandly head, should you be encouraging that, or should you be... So she started to see that, and I'd report that back to her. I'd also saw some of the internal squabbles amongst the body of elders and the way things were run by a bunch of bureaucratic men. And I started to question a lot of the way that they would shepherd the congregation. There'd be members of the congregations who were struggling and just needed a friendly support, but they'd be questioned about their failure to go to meetings regularly. And I started to sort of stand up for them in elders' meetings and just say, hey, maybe we should just be kind to one another. Maybe we should just be more like Jesus and be kind to one another. I didn't believe in Jesus.
All of this abrasive behavior is just pushing you further away.
Yeah. So, all of that happened. It got me to a point where I realized that it wasn't a healthy place to be in. Sherry started to realize that as well. But again, I was stuck in a rut. I was stuck in this situation where neither of us actually could say anything, do anything. And I guess this is the pivotal thing. This is my absolute shit's gone sideways moment. So I had a young witness lady working for us in my business doing the bookkeeping. And she delved around on my computer and found some of my research that I'd been doing, found some of my articles about, Jehovah's Witness doctrinal issues, and also found my logins to an ex-Jehovah's Witness forum that I'd been a part of for a couple of years covertly under a pseudonym. This was a worldwide forum of people in the same situation as me all around that had also recognized that it was a cult, but couldn't, were kind of trapped.
It's probably worse than finding porn on your laptop, right?
Right. And so literally this is how it went down. We get a phone call from this young lady. We're both in the car at the time, so it's on speaker in the car, and she says, I can't work for you anymore. I'd just seen her the day before. She seemed a bit odd on the Friday when she left the office, but I was like, oh, maybe she got a bit on her mind. Saturday she phones, I can't work for you anymore. I said, oh, why? What's up? You know why, she says. And Sherry's in the car, and I went, what is it? And she goes, I can't talk, and hangs up. I tried to call her back several times, couldn't get her.
Could you possibly, with your mind racing about what could it possibly be?
Yeah.
And did you have an inkling?
I had no idea, Andrew. Yeah. At that stage, I'm like, what the fuck? So Sherry's, very good. So she didn't jump to any conclusions, but she's also thinking, what's going on? So we were actually going to an ice hockey game at Homebush. So we're staying in a hotel, so we weren't even in our own environment. So it was pretty, I just felt overwhelmed with stress, not knowing what is this about. Sherry's going, what's going on? And I went, I don't know. So this young lady was living at home with her parents still. And so I phoned her father, who was also one of the elders in the congregation. And I said, what's going on? We just had a call from your daughter. And he said, we're dismayed. We're disgusted. We're so shocked, Sacha. We've had an emergency elders meeting. We found out that you've been on apostate forums. We're so shocked, because I was kind of held up as like a really exemplary one in the congregation before this point. And I said, well, let's talk about it. What's the situation? You've been on apostate forums. He wouldn't say anything else to me then. I had to then come clean to Sherry. So I had Sherry there, and also her aunt, who was amazing support, never a Jehovah's Witness, really, really support, basically like Sherry's mum. They have a closeness like that. She was there. So I'm really kind of glad Auntie Bev was there, because I was able to have this conversation.
She could be kind of a voice of reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was basically able to go, okay, I've been on this forum. I don't think this is true. I don't think the religion's right. I also don't believe in the Bible.
Fuck, this will have to come out in one big go. Holy
Sitting in a
shit.
bloody hotel room at Homebush Bay before an ice hockey game. And I'm like, I don't think the religion's right. I also don't think the Bible's true. And I think that the personality of God's disgusting. And I don't even think there is a God. And Sherry in that moment's like, well, who are you then? Like, who are you? Like, what's our religion based upon? Oh, sorry, what's our marriage based upon now? That was a really tough weekend. So...
Did it feel good to say that out loud?
Yeah, you know, it actually felt like a weight off my shoulders.
Yeah. It must have been just trapped inside you for so long and you couldn't talk to anyone about it.
No. So by that stage, there was about 4 years. And it's funny, on that forum, my username was Stuck in a Rut. That's the name I chose for myself.
Fuck.
And the login was Trapped or something. It's like, obviously my psyche, my subconscious is telling me, fuck, you know, you got to do something. So my name, Stuck in a Rut. Thousands of posts on here. I said to Sherry, look, I'll show you anything. I'll show you the forum. She didn't want to look too far in. And I'm kind of glad because at that stage, there was like tens of thousands of posts in. And like from the stupidest thing, like, can you believe they're teaching this week? And how paragraph 6 is, well, I can't believe this. And the Bible's shit. And, blah, blah. You know, these are the sorts of stuff. Because it was my deconstructing years. It was my only place where I could speak.
You could vent.
Yeah. In a safe space.
Anonymously.
Yep. And I recommend that to anybody who's trapped in that situation. You need to find a safe space. Now, I know the dangers of online forums. We can be trapped into echo chambers and we need to be very cautious of that too. But in this case, this was a supportive space where I could voice my doubts about the religion and also be provided with some really helpful guidance from others who have walked that path before me on practical ways to pave the way to talk to Sherry and so on. So I had kind of thought maybe after a few more years, she might have just said, hey, I don't want to go to these meetings anymore. But what this young lady did that worked for us...
It forced your hand.
It did.
Yeah.
And I'm actually really glad because otherwise how long was I going to keep circling the drain for? How long was this going to go on for?
A long time.
Yeah. And the quality of my life would have been ruined and my life with Sherry and all that. So it was kind of really good that happened. It gave an opportunity for those hard conversations to talk to Sherry. And like she asked me questions like, it was really cute. She says, well, if you don't believe in... Does this mean you're going to start celebrating birthdays? Are you going to start smoking? Are we going to do Christmas?
Are you going to grow your beard?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's the sort of question
I'm
she
doing
asked.
all of it.
Yes.
I'm fucking doing all of it.
Exactly. And you know, she said, tell me in a nutshell one thing that you don't think's right. And I'm like, well, why is it that we think we're saved, but the 2-year-old next door whose parents didn't take our magazines on a Saturday morning deserves to be destroyed at Armageddon? Why is that? And she goes, that's something a 15-year-old should say, not someone who's been raised in the truth and has studied the Bible. I'm like, if someone knocked on our door now with the message that we preach, would you listen to it? We don't listen to telemarketers that harass us unexpectedly. So why would you accept this? Because we were born into it. So we were able to have these conversations. But I can also remember a really pivotal thing. And I basically just shared it all with her, but I also totally lost it, Andrew, and broke down and kind of fell on the floor in the lounge room and just started crying because I looked at her and I went, I'm not a bad person. Like, I'm not a bad person, but I understand that me questioning this religion automatically classes me as an apostate who is a bad person. You know, I may as well go and murder kittens or whatever. You know?
It must be hard to suddenly feel like you've turned into a villain, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the way you're perceived.
Right.
Within this group of people that you've grown up your entire life, of which you were respected.
Yeah. And Sherry was in that situation too, where she knew who I was. We had a whole life that we'd built together.
Yeah.
And she also saw how the elders kept trying to harass me, phone calls, and trying to make me meet up with a couple of other elders and go through this whole witch trial situation. So they saw they were contacting her, trying to get her to rat
that
me
insane
out.
behaviour actually helped to open her eyes,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly
So
right.
They actually did you a favour there. Than if they were more relaxed about everything,
Yep,
they
yep.
would have made you look like the crazy one.
Exactly. And in fact, they phoned her at work. She's running a busy cancer practice. One of the elders phoned her one day. She came home and she said, look, this guy that I've grown up all my life with, he kept phoning me at work and I'm busy at work. And I just said to her, look, he wants to talk to you about me, and that's totally fine. You do whatever you want to do. I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't do. You're you individual. She said, but I don't want to talk to him. Plus, I'm busy at work. Can you please call him and tell him not to call me? So I called him and I said, mate, hey, happy to for you to chat to my wife, but at the same time, it wouldn't be appropriate for you to talk to her behind my back. Would you like me to call your wife and chat to her behind your back? And he says, well, we need to get you to an elders meeting. Which other elders would you like to meet with? And I said, I have no desire to do that. I'm happy to have a coffee with you. We can chat about footy. We can chat about whatever. But no, I'm not meeting with you. Now, because I took their power away, they expected I would go to this judicial committee, which is basically a judgment where they could then take action. I refused to show up for it. And so we lived in this limbo.
I mean, yeah, what would be the appeal, right? What's the upside of you going to a bloody a meeting where they're all going to gang up on you, right?
And
right,
they run it like a court. They run it like that. And you don't get representation. You can't record it. Now, I did record a few of these conversations on my phone just for posterity and for, just to keep myself in check too, to make sure I didn't say anything that I wouldn't be proud of. But I just kept saying to them, look, I'm having my doubts. I prayed about it, and which wasn't true. And God's given me direction, which wasn't true. So I'm quite happy with where I'm at. Thanks, brothers. I'll contact you if I need you. Now, they didn't like that because I took the power away from them. I flipped the scripts. I was supposed to go to them crawling on hands and knees and broken glass and ask them for spiritual guidance. I didn't play those games because I didn't believe that they had any power. There's a famous expression that the only power people have over you is that which you allow. Now, that doesn't always exist. I know certain authorities do have power over us, but in that case, I took the power back. And I think Sherry saw that too, and she saw that this was an opportunity for us to reclaim our lives, but it came with consequences.
But when you're pushing back and refusing, you must have, did that feel empowering? Did you feel good about that?
Empowering, but also absolutely shit scared. Because again, I'd lived my whole life assuming that these people had authority over me and that they spoke for God. Now, I think what helped was the fact that I dismantled there was no God. He wasn't using this organization. So therefore they claimed to be empowered by him. Well, it's nothing. So that really helped me. But, they still did have power in one way, and that was the power to manipulate all of our social group. Everybody we knew instantly dropped us.
What about
family, the whole lot?
Yeah, I was going to say, what about your mum and dad, like straight away, right? Like,
right.
What was that first conversation like when they heard the news?
Well, see, I never said anything to them straight away. What I didn't know until a few months later is that the elders got on the phone and called everybody around Australia, our families, our social groups, anyone that we knew.
They have a dialing list, all right?
Yep.
All right.
And warned everyone.
Out. Call them.
Yep, that Sacha and Sherry have displayed apostate tendencies and we need to be very cautious. So they basically did what is classed as disfellowshipping us, but we didn't know. They never sent us a letter, an email. We live right near the Kingdom Hall.
So you just got blacklisted, right?
And
none of your friends or family contact you to let you know that you've been blacklisted?
No. Should have seen. Social media was amazing. Just watching Facebook and Insta, just watching people drop off from week by week, it just became hilarious. But people that I had known my whole life, people who we were, godparents for their kids, effectively, people I'd helped into, in and out of hospital, people who we'd done things around their home in emergencies.
Not
just
a single
dropped
conversation.
Us. No.
Yeah.
People, living in a smaller town where we're at, I would see people I'd known my whole life. I'd walk up to them and say, hey, grab your coffee. They would just look right through me like I didn't exist. They would spit vitriol like, we're not speaking to you. You've become apostate. And I, at first it hurt, but as the years went on, I realized.
Such insane behavior.
It is. And again, people in the general community don't realize that about Jehovah's Witnesses. They're not just the nice people that knock on your door on Saturdays. They're people that will act in this insane way if somebody does not toe the line or decides to leave. And I guess that's the number one thing about what makes a difference between a healthy religion or group and an unhealthy, toxic cult is what happens when you try and leave.
Mm.
If you try and leave some, multi-level marketing thing, do people cut you off and stop talking to you? If you try and leave a sporting team, you don't want to re-sign your membership up for the footy club, do people stop talking to you? There may be a bit of stirring at the pub, but they're not going to,
You're not excommunicated.
Right.
Yeah.
We were. And I'm okay with that now, but at the time when we had no life outside of it and no social group outside, that was pretty fucked up because we were on our own. But one thing I think is a good positive, it drew Sherry and I even closer together because here we were on a new journey. We're basically in our early 40s with the opportunity to say, well, who are we? Who am I as an individual? Who are we as a couple? How do we reclaim our authentic life? How do we build an authentic life with genuine people? And how do we basically reframe our whole worldview, recognizing that the world's not going to be destroyed by God any day now, that people out there are not all evil trying to, get the best over us, and that the world is just this beautiful, wonderful place made up of all sorts of people. So I think that was actually a really positive thing.
Yeah.
And in many ways, I'm really glad that's happened. And
what were the first steps in terms of, I mean, did you decide to move or anything like that to start over?
We wanted to stay there because, damn it, they're not going to own us. And so we live in this smaller town southwest of Sydney. And I thought, you know what? Fuck it. I own this town, not them. So I run a small business there. I know everybody in the community. This is my town. This isn't your town. That was the attitude I had. Not in an arrogant way, but in more of an empowerment way of saying, we're not going to run from you guys.
Yeah, we don't have to totally change our lives.
Right.
More than we already are.
Right.
We're just going to stay here and live as the new people we are.
Yep. We're still the same people. And in fact, when my father finally did question me on it a few months later, he says, I hear from the elders that you're not attending. And I said, but Dad, I'm still the same person I've always been. In fact, I'm a more honest person, a more sincere person. I have better ethics, morals, and standards now than I ever did because, I'm not looking down on people. I'm not judging people. I used to have
and
to...
you're not praying for the destruction of millions and millions of people around the world. Right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. In fact, one thing Jehovah's Witnesses always tried to do is get us to imitate our personality. In fact, they would say, put on the personality, the new personality according to God's standards, according to God's personality. Basically be a clone of God. That's what... Well, I started to look at that and go, now I get to be a genuine, lovely person because the personality of God is not someone I want to imitate. Because if his record in the Bible shows that he's someone who's fine with misogyny, homophobia, genocide, incest, slavery, torture of animals, and all number of other disgusting things that the Bible clearly shows, I'm not okay with those things. So I actually think I'm a better person not imitating the personality of God or his organization on earth because I'm not judging people and I'm not condemning people. And I'm not okay with those sorts of things that God seems to be A-okay with. In fact, they print this little bookmark up saying, when reading the Bible, ask yourself what each portion of the Bible tells you about God as a person. Well, I did that. I read the Bible after my deconstructing stage without the lens of the religion. And I went, the personality of God's not someone I want to imitate. Not that I think that God exists. But so I guess there's the positive. I'm able to now be a better person with all of my human flaws without having to imitate a narcissistic, toxic deity figure. So, yeah, I'm happy with where I'm at.
Must feel quite freeing. Right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah.
So what were the first things you did when you became the non-JW Sacha D'Souza to kind of, I guess, enjoy this new freedom you had?
Yeah, the really terrible, decadent things. I let myself grow facial hair.
Yes.
Fuck,
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. We went and blew some money on pokies and realized I don't have a clue how they work. We celebrated our first birthday.
Yep.
We did Easter egg hunts that we never got to do as a kid.
Was it fun?
Yeah. You know what? It really was. We were reclaiming life. Went to, music concerts. We love, live music events.
Christmas?
Yep, did Christmas. Not for the religious aspect, but just for the celebration part
The fact
of it.
you've never done it.
Exactly. Our relationship with Sherry's aunt, who was never a JW, is amazing now too, because she said she waited 40-something years for us to get out of the bloody cult, and then she's able to be true family to us. My mum, I'm really close with her now because, again, she gets to see me be an authentic person, and she and I have a bond where my father is completely out of it. She, she gets to see us live an authentic life now.
It's probably an insulting analogy, but I'm hoping you've heard it before. But I guess the only even remote comparison I have is when you grow up thinking that Santa is real and the Easter Bunny is real, right? And then you get to a certain age where in your head you just think, hold on, these bits just don't seem to add up.
Yes.
And then logic takes over and you realize that it's just something you've been told.
Yes.
Right?
In In fact, that's a really good point. A really great guy, Dave Warnock, who's over in the States, he wrote a book all about that. Basically saying that in a religious world, we were living like a child. We were kind of thinking like children. We were being captivated to have that childlike view of the world. Now that we're out of that, we get to grow up.
And you get to educate yourself. There's the world full of information that you can research without fear that you're, breaking the rules of the church.
Yes. And I get to have an opinion on things for myself that aren't prescribed by the religion. So I can have a political view now because Jehovah's Witnesses never had anything to do with politics. I can have a social view.
Do they vote?
No, they don't vote. They stay right out of it. I can have a social conscience now because, again, I don't need to outsource the correcting of the world's environmental problems to some future utopia where God's going to wave a magic wand and fix global warming. I can have a part in that. I can do my bit now. We never got involved with anything in the community, a cleanup day, because God's going to do it eventually. Or I can go and donate to charity, without being condemned for giving to a worldly institution.
Instead of waiting to live in paradise after Armageddon, why don't we try and work and make the world that we've got better right now, right?
Exactly.
It seems like a much more positive, productive mindset for everyone, right?
Exactly. And there's this scripture in the Bible where Jesus supposedly said that take my yoke upon you, like a yoke they would put over horses or cattle, to help them tow a load. Take my yoke upon you because my load is kindly and light. Well, living in a religious bubble, it wasn't. It was oppressive and heavy. Coming out now I feel like I've got no weight on my shoulders. Now I feel like we can make the world a better place. Now I feel like we can actually contribute to helping other people have a smile on their face. Like, I've got this social media quote that just says, making someone smile can change the world. Maybe not the whole world, but their world. And so if I can do some little bit of good to help people now, then that's my purpose in life. So I used to think my purpose was to preach God's message and, save people. My purpose now is just to make the world a better place and just help someone. Just be a friend. Just be normal and just enjoy life.
I was going to say, and have fun as well.
Right. Well, that's actually a big thing. Learning to know that it's okay to do things just for ourselves, to do what would have been classed as selfish. Just live your own life. That's okay to take care of myself. I don't have to put myself secondary all the time. And that doesn't mean I'm becoming a bad person. It just means we're living an authentic life.
Yep.
And I'm massive with that. And, I've had some really good inspiration from great people that have walked these paths from any form of high control religion. And over the years, so many great publications, books, websites where people have gone, you're not alone. Because I think this is the hardest thing is I felt alone for all those years during the wake-up period. I felt alone as a witness because I was separate to the world. I felt alone in my waking up period. I felt alone when we went through the trauma of being outed. Now I feel like we're not alone because we can actually help other people in that journey as well. And so,
do you have friends now?
Amazing circle of friends, really good, close friends. I used to think I had thousands of friends as a Jehovah's Witness, but they weren't friends. They were conditional friends. They were people that, as long as you said the right stuff.
That's right. As soon as you leave the church, they hiss at you when you're at the coffee shop, right? So that's not a real friend.
No. So the friends we've built up now, a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses as well, but not just that, because I was very conscious if your social circle is just made up of ex-members, well, all you're going to do is bitch and moan about what was before us, and that's not healthy. So for me, the biggest thing, me and Sherry, we've worked very hard to make great friends, no matter what the background is. You just throw yourself out there. As we joked, people struggle to make friends. You just got to be to have friends, you got to be a friend.
Yeah.
So I've put myself out. We put ourselves out there. We've got an amazing circle of friends, so much so that we can't keep up with social activities now. And that's
a cool feeling,
isn't it?
Right?
It's great.
Have a full dance card. Yeah.
It really is good. And, it's rewarding. And I hope we contribute something good to our friends' lives just as all of our friends contribute to us as well. And so, life is amazing now. Like one of our really good friends in the States, Gail, she said there is much more light, hope and happiness this side of religion or outside of religion. Again, I may have butchered that quote. It's basically saying that things are a lot better when you're outside of the echo chamber and outside of the fishbowl. And, and I've just, I work along with an amazing volunteer organisation.
Yes, so what's that? It was Recovering from Religion?
Yeah,
right?
recoveringfromreligion.org. You can find the website. Basically designed by a psychologist to help provide hope, healing and support to people who are questioning their faith and working out where do they stand with matters of faith and religion, and recognising too that they're not alone. There's validation with that. We run support groups all around the world via Zoom and also in person.
What do you do?
I run quite a few of the support groups around the world via Zoom. I also help with running the support group program of Recovering from Religion.
Do you meet with any of these people in real life?
Yeah, we do. We have, during COVID, we of course didn't do in-person meetups, but a lot of them are starting again in person. Very similar to, I don't know, like an AA meeting type thing where you might have people where you can talk about what you've been through and provide that support for one another, but not just to dwell in it. So the biggest thing about Recovering from Religion, when you look at their logo, they have like a picture of a bridge. It's kind of to show that you can cross over from one side to another and things can be a lot better. That hope, healing and support, there's a lot more light when you're on this side of religion. Validation to understand the trauma that you've gone through. A lot of psychologists we work along with as well, such as Dr. Marlene Winnell. She has an organisation called Journey Free, and she also talked about religious trauma syndrome. It's now a recognised thing that people go through, just as we have post-traumatic stress disorder. There can be a religious trauma as people, are navigating all of the oppression that religion gave.
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised. It sounds like such a head fuck to, have this huge battle, not only in your brain, but then also lose all the people that in your life that you held dear. I mean, that's a very traumatic thing for anyone to go through, right?
Yeah. So these resources are there to really help people to process it, to come to an understanding of what we've been through.
Are there people that have followed your journey of leaving Jehovah's Witness years after you that you've kind of been in touch with when they're just kind of finding their feet?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like very much like a baton race. Everybody has a responsibility to pass the baton and to help others along the way. So people do reach out to us. We've done a lot of YouTube videos. We've done a lot of in-person meetups and a lot of social media platforms where we're helping people, and just to pay forward what was done for us. Others helped us along the way, and we need to be able to provide support for others, because the first thing when somebody comes out is they just need to be supported and heard, and also helped to get the resources in place, the stepping stones to then reclaim their life. So it's really, really important to do that. And, because I guess when you think about it, religion is a lot like it infects people. It infects every aspect. We've been through the pandemic, and so we all know about viruses. The gentleman and psychologist, Dr. Darrell Ray, who started Recovering from Religion, has written a fantastic book called The God Virus. And he talks about how religions basically infect people, both individually and collectively, and that in order to get inoculated, you need to have these resources in place to help people recover and to get out of it. So
it must help your journey to be there as a resource to help others.
Yeah, it really does, mate. I feel like I used to spend a lot of my time preaching a message one way. Now I can spend a lot of my time helping to undo the hurt from those religions and kind of, I don't know, be more on the side of inoculating people from the dangers of religion, help them get rid of the virus of religion.
When was the last time you spoke to your dad?
It's a very superficial relationship that consists of a phone call every couple of months. He won't respond to anything more in depth.
Yep. But it's just more of just acknowledging that you're alive and well.
Yeah, I guess he knows I'm alive and well via the conversations I have with Mum.
Yep.
He hears that happens. But I did have an opportunity to talk to him once on the phone, and I said, Dad, we could talk about everything: dogs, cats, cars, football. We used to text throughout footy games when Fremantle was playing. All of that's gone. We can talk about all those things. He said, no, I can't have a relationship with you because you've turned your back on Jehovah. And I said, Dad, our relationship can be based on many other things apart from your religion. He doesn't want to do that because I think it questions, it challenges his stability, and it challenges his eternal salvation. So he would rather give up his relationship with me to save his own skin down the track.
I imagine it must be very hard for him to wrestle with that every day.
He gets the validation from his insular group. You know,
Yeah.
they tell him he's doing the right thing, pat him on the back and give him the support, make him feel like the martyr for having a son who's gone wayward. And look, I don't hold it against him, as indeed not just him, but all people who stay within a religious bubble. I try to be very careful not to, as part of being a nicer person, not be judgmental of them. Because a lot of people, they are victims of the institutions and the oppression. It's not their fault.
Right. Their minds are poisoned over a long
Right.
period of time into thinking one way, and it must be, it's only a small amount, it seems, that find the strength and the resources to come to the conclusion that everything they've been brought up with is wrong.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We don't hold it against somebody who gets injured or somebody who gets infected with something. We don't hold it against them. We hold it against whatever has caused the injury, whatever has caused the infection, whatever has affected that person. You know, we don't blame the victim. And I think that's the biggest thing. If someone makes a conscious decision, though, to remain within that bubble, well, we have to respect their right to do that. But I also need to show them that there is a way out of that if they so choose. And so my door remains open for my father, for anybody we knew through the religion. If they ever go through that same journey that we went through and realize, oh, shit, you know, everything's gone sideways and I'm in a cult, they can come and knock on our door. We'll be there for them. We'll be there to help them. And through institute or organisations like Recovering from Religion or just as friends, we will be there to help people.
But you have more warmer conversations with your mum?
Yeah. With mum, in fact, I think finally I have a closeness with her as a mother and son should, because she gets to know me and I get to know her. And I also feel for what she's had to go through for all those, you know, for that 30-odd years where I was the devout witness, where I even looked down on her because she wasn't a baptized witness, because she drank and smoked. I looked down on her and judged her. I don't do that anymore. So I'm actually close to her finally. And yeah, it's really good to support like that. And I think that's the biggest thing, you know, just recognizing that life is awesome outside of the cult bubble. Life is fantastic when you get to make decisions for yourself. And life is amazing when you can form relationships based upon not an institution or an organization telling you what to do, but just being a good bloody human, you know, just being a good
Because
person.
it just felt right.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But, I mean, I've talked all about me, but it's no different to everything you've gone through too. You get to an opportunity in life where something happens and you get to reframe and reclaim who you want to be.
Yeah, I think I had to go through my own kind of crisis point of thinking, like, is this the man that I wanted to be? And it wasn't, right? And so, I had that chance to have a pretty hard conversation with myself and look in the mirror and say, well, who did I want to be? And that kind of simplified things, right? It was to say, well, I guess I'd wanted to always make people laugh. And so that was the first thing I did as soon as I got out of prison and got my bail rules relaxed to start doing it. And now I did the tally the other day. I've been doing comedy for about 9 months now, and I've done nearly 200 gigs. So that's about 5 a week.
Damn.
For the last 9 months.
Man,
And
that's awesome.
I love it.
Is that just your community service time?
Well, I do a joke on stage about the fact that they should count towards my 200 hours community service, but sadly no. So I do that separately.
I've been to one of your gigs, and yeah, awesome that you're doing that. And so do you reckon that, you know, when we reframe the stuff that happens to us in life, are you kind of grateful for the shit that went sideways for you?
Well, I am. I think that sometimes people have to have a crisis point in their life to really to have that realization of who is the person they were meant to be, and force and I guess push them in the right direction. So for you, you may have been, it could have been years until you actually did anything about the thoughts you were having, but it wasn't until you had this crisis point where your employee found this stuff on your laptop that it all brought it to a head, right? So, yeah, I think there are a lot of people that, as painful it is have to go through some kind of painful crisis moment to turn them onto the path that they should have been on.
Yeah, no, well said. I mean, yeah, so mine was that. Yours was the knock on the door.
Yeah.
And
being
the raid.
raided by the Raptor Squad. Shout out to the Raptor Squad.
Yeah. Thanks, boys.
Yeah. So, but I think you know, it makes me question sometimes that some people go through life living a pretty miserable life because they don't have a big enough crisis point that makes them think, okay, fuck this, I need to be doing what I was always meant to be doing.
Yep.
And so that can be sadder, right? As if someone doesn't realize that they get to 70 years old and say, I've lived this life that I never really loved, doing something that I never really was passionate about, in a relationship that I never really was passionate about. And if only I'd had maybe some crisis point earlier in my life, I would have stood up for myself more.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know what the answer is, but I hope that people can have those conversations with themselves and find the thing that's really going to make them content about life without having to go through a crisis experience, or I guess a crisis point like myself or like you. You wouldn't wish that on anyone, but sometimes that's the only way for you to find the right path.
Yeah. And I think as a society we're growing. We're recognizing now that being stuck in a rut is not healthy, and we're being given opportunities, platforms to voice and for people to sort of regain their authenticity or, speak up. And I do think that we're a long way from, say, where we were even decades ago, where people would just resign themselves to their lot in life. Now we're being able to, kids are being taught to be empowered, to speak up, to say, what do you want to do with your life?
Yeah.
To get that validation and that support. And I think that's awesome. Who knows where we'll be in 20, 30 years' time again?
Take bigger risks.
Yeah.
I think there's a big danger in playing it safe because you're too afraid to take a risk. And it doesn't seem scary at the time, but when you get to 70 and you think, fuck, my life would have been so much better if I'd just taken those risks to do the things that I always wanted to do, but I was too afraid to try it. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. And, life is so wonderful. It's what we make of it. Just get out there and live it.
Agreed. Well, this has been another episode of Shit's Gone Sideways. I've been here with Sacha D'Souza. Thank you very much for your time, Sacha.
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate it, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shit's Gone Sideways.